Hello and welcome to the Joy Village podcast, a celebration of Black educators past and present committed to the joy and thriving of Black youth in Athens, Georgia and beyond. And y'all, I have one of my favorite people. I'm not just saying that, Lawrence. This is my brother, okay? Lawrence Harris. He is our, oh shoot, you're gonna have to say your title because I always mess it up. Community engagement.
There you go. Chief of Community Engagement and Strategic Partnership.
Boom.
Yes.
Clark County School District.
Yes.
Hashtag better together. We're so I'm so glad you're here today.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Man, I really should have practiced that before. I always mess up your title because it has too many words in it. But
it does.
The title you stumble over, but the work is so important. I really appreciate the way that you operate as a bridge between the district and the community. And that's really important. In fact, I don't know if you've listened to the podcast but several of the folks who've come on here have specifically said the big problem is the lack of connection and partnership between families and schools. So the work that you're doing is really important, and I'm thankful for it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I want to hear, this is really my chance just to ask you all the questions I've never asked you before and to hear all your stories. I'm excited about it. So tell me a little bit about young Lawrence.
Young Lawrence.
Yes. Who were you as a child?
I was that was quite the child. Let's see. Well, I guess it's important to start with, my family dynamics. I was in a military, brat, as they used to call us, until I was 12. So we moved around a lot, started school in New Orleans, Louisiana. That's where I went to pre-K and kindergarten, and then moved to Columbus, Georgia for elementary school, Huntsville, Alabama for my 4th and 5th grade years, and then back to Columbus for middle school in 6th grade. And so Lawrence was a very, who was I? I was very focused. I love to read. I still love to read. I read books pretty much all day, every day. I found that they were very much, I won't call it an escape, but as a way to travel and see the world that I didn't know much about. So I loved reading novels. I love reading about different historical characters because I felt like when you read about someone's biography, it's really your chance to really interview them in a way that I wouldn't have the ability to do. So I love reading about people and their journeys and challenges they transgressed and they were able to overcome. And I loved reading nonfiction books. I loved, my imagination was always wild. So very imaginative kid, very playful, not that athletic, I would say. That was not my strength. Yeah, not athletic. My brothers were. My older brother, younger brother were. I was the middle of 3 boys, or I am now the middle of 3 boys still. So yeah, that was me. Middle school, Birmingham, high school in Decatur, Georgia, then back to Birmingham, Hoover, Alabama for senior year and graduated.
Wow, I didn't realize that's a lot of moving.
A lot of moving.
And it kind of connects some dots because you're so good at kind of like getting along with all sorts of different people. Like, I wonder if you built those skills when you were just getting thrown into this group and that group.
Yes. That's what I attributed to, actually. I was actually telling a team of folks a few weeks ago, I attribute my abilities or my this skill set of just kind of navigating different spaces to being forced to be in different spaces as a child, because every community we moved to was completely different than the last, from racial demographics, socioeconomic status. So I've gone from the poorest of poor communities to very rich, flourishing communities that have, celebrities living there with very nice cars. And so I've seen the gamut, which I think is also part of my why in education, is seeing that there are disparities in education that exist. And just depending on where you live at and where you are will determine what kind of educational quality you receive. So it's kind of helped always fire me up to do this work.
So what, you talked about being imaginative and a reader. Where did that come from? Like, what inspired that, do you think? Is it your family? Was it one particular teacher or school?
I think it was a combination of both. My mom was a reader. My mom loved to read books. So she was always giving us a book to read. So me and my younger brother, Lavarius, read a lot. My older brother did not like reading. He still does not like to read. So he did not read a lot. So we I don't know, it was also just the way I think, life, especially during those younger elementary years, was not the easiest. And so I think just as I reflect on reading, it was a really great way to just exist outside of the circumstances that were in front of me, and just to be and find myself in these books and imagining what it could be like to fly, or to travel, or to have powers, or just science fiction and just different things. So it was a way to keep, I think, a child such as mine's imagination going. But I even say is even as far as to dream of what the future could be. And so I think I just like reading because that allowed me to keep dreaming regardless of what was happening around me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you are quite the dreamer. It's one of the things I love about you the most is you always have, you're like several plans ahead in your mind, ahead of this present moment. And I mean, I feel like those dreams have taken you pretty far,
Oh yeah.
the same room as Barack Obama. So that I feel like you did pretty well.
Yes, picture sits right
Um,
over here, actually. Yeah.
yes, you have to you got to tell the story.
I got the President Obama story. I'll
Yeah.
keep it brief, but basically 2014. I always remember it because that was young 20s, and I was a college advisor at Clark Central High School. I had some students in my office, and I remember a call coming into my office phone. And of course, you tell the kids to be quiet, and I picked up, and it was a guy named David, and I never remember his last name, but he was basically, David, whatever, something advisor to the president at the White House, and I thought it was a prank call. So I hung up, and then he called back, and I told the kids, like, watch this, how you deal with pranksters. So I was like, oh really, White House, making some very obscene jokes that at that time are not appropriate, but like, basically hung up again. And then in the midst of that, the principal at the time, Robbie Hooker, called and said that there was a call on the phone that I need to pick up and answer, and basically take seriously. And so the call came back through, it forwarded it. It turned out to be a real call. I told the students, get out of my office, because they were laughing and playing. I was like, go, this is real. And I just remember the whole time, even on the ride, because this was a Tuesday. The gentleman told me they would have a car in front of my house Wednesday to pick me up and take me to the airport, which they did. And it was also surreal because it's like little old me. I don't know what there's millions of people that, could have been selected for this opportunity. And for me to be able to go and just, have conversations with the president and first lady was just, life changing. And it was very humbling. Very humbling is the way I would describe it. I remember her pulling me to the side at one point. I was nervous, and she's like, we're regular people too. We're just, and I was just like, of course you would say that. So she's also very tall. So I think it was a really wonderful moment. I remember my grandmother telling me as I was going up, she's like, make sure you tell them we're praying for them. And I was like, oh, I'm not gonna. She's like, tell them we're praying for them. I was like, yes, ma'am. So I told them both. I said, hey, my grandmother's praying for you, by the way. So, gotta let them know. But yeah, great experience. Loved it. If anything, I love the experience of meeting them, but if anything, I love the ability of dreaming. I think that also gave my kids when I got back. So it helped my kids, the kids I serve. And I truly think I'm a servant to our students, to be able to see, like, this could happen to any of you. You just never know, like, who's watching, who's listening. And most of my kids always say, protect your character, protect your name, because you only have one name at the end of the day. And once it's tainted, it's so hard to clean up. So it was a really awesome experience. I loved it.
Oh, I love that story so much.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, no one expects that to happen. Like,
No.
I'm sure that's not something that you imagined as a kid. Like, who did you see yourself becoming when you were young? Did you always have like really high goals? Tell me what.
I would say elementary, more imaginative than high goals. I wanted to be an Egyptologist, actually. So I was very fascinated in Egyptian culture and mythology. So much so most of my office behind me has Egyptian sculptures, and most of my team here knows I'm a, as they call it, Egypt geek.
Oh my God.
I wanted to be Egyptologist as a child, and then had some family members who basically told me, like, there's nothing left to discover, which, by the way, is not true. They've discovered several things since that time of dream crushing. But yeah, but as I got older, I was raised in the church, and I do remember there was a moment in time where our pastor at the time told me that I would be a doctor, and I took that very literally. And so pretty much from 7th grade up, I was very focused on becoming a doctor. I remember reading through the yellow pages, trying to figure out what the different types of doctors were. And that's how I did my research to see what a podiatrist was and an orthopedist surgeon. And so I made my notes. And When I went to college, I was pre-med to be a pediatrician. That lasted all but one semester before I realized, nope, don't think this is what I want to do. So yeah, switch it up.
Gosh. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I love, you made me feel really old when you said you flipped through the yellow pages. Kids yellow pages, it's like think a book of Google, like just a little directory, never mind. Wow. So when did that shift um from I'm thinking of being in the medical profession after having my dreams crushed about Egyptology to maybe I could be impactful in the education world? Was it also during your undergrad years, or when did that happen?
It was undergrad. I guess all those experiences, as I think about them, are related, probably in some way, right? Like I learned from each experience and became, I guess, more of who Lawrence is meant to be. Um, Education, though, was not my goal. Even in undergrad, I majored in psychology and Spanish. I had a primary focus on neuroscience, but
And what school?
at UGA, University of Georgia. I went to UGA for undergrad. Oh yeah, I should probably say I went to UGA undergrad, then I went to University of Pennsylvania for my master's, and I'm finishing up my PhD now at UGA. So hopefully I'm in the last two chapters, and hopefully we'll have that. I'll still be a doctor, so I guess the pastor wasn't wrong. It just took several more years in a different direction than what I thought.
The
So
interpretation
the
wasn't right.
interpretation,
That's
yes,
that's
yes, the
what it was.
power of language, the power of language. But I actually went to pursue education after working at the Police Athletic League in Jacksonville, Florida. I did not have the best freshman year at UGA, academically, socially, and emotionally. That actually tends to be fairly common, right? And for people of color, especially when you're a first generation student. So I was the first in my family to go. There's a lot of just circumstances that were happening financially and mentally, and it just wasn't a good space. I'm very happy about where I've become, and I'm very thankful that I've been able to get to where I have and get past that point. But because it was such a tough time, I did, ultimately leave UGA after my freshman year, transferred to Florida State College, which is a two-year college in Jacksonville, Florida. So I'm a very huge proponent of two-year colleges. I do think two-year college should definitely be an option for our students, and they should see it just as much as, four-year college can get you to success, two-year college or going short-term training programs. There's many options. So yeah, that's what I did. And I went down to Jacksonville. It was a tough time. Found myself homeless for a while. And again, very thankful I was able to get myself back on my feet. Not just me and myself. I think God helped me get back on my feet. And I found myself selling knives, and I won't go deep into that story, but basically went from selling knives to selling cars. I was terrible at selling cars. I was very too honest, is what I was told, and I told the manager that when they hired me, is I believe in transparency, I believe in honesty, and so I was not a good salesman because I was the one telling a mom with kids that maybe this isn't the best investment at the time because of finances, and that's not how you sell a car. um, so ultimately, all that to say, sorry, long story to get to where I was going. I became an enrichment specialist for the Police Athletic League of Jacksonville, which is an after-school program working with, as they called them back then, inner city youth. Though I don't like that terminology. It was pretty much Black and brown youth who live in their neighborhoods inside the city. And so work with elementary. Elementary was not my strength. So they moved me to middle school, and I had 7th and 8th grade students. I actually really like working with middle school students. And then from there, I kept working, and then eventually transferred back to UGA, kept studying psychology and Spanish and sociology. And then when I graduated, I went on to move to counseling or college advising at Clark Central High School. And then from there, it is where I'm at. The rest is history, as they say. Yes,
I
yes.
love that. I had no idea that you had that whole experience of transferring
Yeah.
schools.
Mm-hmm.
That's first of all really common and really understandable. I'm really curious about what it was like being a Black student at the University of Georgia. It's been such a huge topic of conversation since 2020 of like how can the university be what it needs to be for this community
Mm-hmm.
in ways that it hasn't been before. So what was that like for you?
I think it goes back to probably the beginning of the discussion around like having moved to different cities and spaces provided me a certain foundation and being able to navigate the space at UGA. I will say I do remember our first week there though, being told and given t-shirts 1.9. And what that represented is that Black males were 1.9% of the population at UGA. And so it was a really powerful like moment for me to be in Creswell Hall downstairs with all these other Black males on campus, you know, from freshmen to seniors to graduate students. And all I remember is the coordinator from the Office of Multicultural Services and Programs, and there's different folks from NAACP, and they set us all down as many as they could fit. And there was several hundred of us, and they said, this is basically you all. This is your existence on this campus. And so they had us look to the left and the right and reminded us that we have to have each other's backs. We have to be there for one another. And so I think that was a really powerful moment and a great way to start a year out, recognizing that, you know, I remember him saying, you may be the only person of color in your class, which was sometimes the experience. I remember sometimes being in class and seeing like, I'm the only Black person here, but not just Black, only person of color in general. I think what that forced us to do though is forge relationships with our fellow brothers and sisters on campus. And so I had most of my friend group and peer group were Black and brown males and females. We stuck together. We had each other's backs. I think we helped each other navigate that space as best as we could. Again, academically, socially, emotionally, I struggled my freshman year. Now my GPA dropped so low, I was not unable to get financial aid. Also part of my motivation for starting College Factory was because of that experience. And so, you know, from there, I had no choice but to leave the university. But I think it was good for me. I grew so much that year away at Florida State College, at the 2-year college. And I think I relay that experience to my students anytime I can, is that we all have different paths. It's not a straight line. And ultimately going a different route doesn't make you less than a person who's going a traditional route. I wouldn't even want to call it traditional, the more, I guess, common route for some. So yeah, that's kind of how that happened. And I think, you know, my experience as a Black male on campus just continued to grow and to thrive. And my best friend, we were roommates, and he had very similar experiences, and we just supported one another. He went to a high school, he grew up in Brooklyn. So all of his high schools and schooling experience was very much rooted in Black culture, very focused on the Black diaspora. Like it was a very so he got to UGA and his culture shock was a completely different, he had never seen really white people before at all. I've lived around him, gone to school with him. So it was a completely different experience for him. Yeah, he struggled a lot with that.
When y'all were comparing experiences, did you feel like, oh man, like he had some experiences I wish I had had?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, we were just talking last week about this during my birthday weekend about just even looking at how we both had the option to go to a HBCU and Morehouse specifically, and what kind of played into our decision to go to University of Georgia versus Morehouse, which, you know, to this day, I was thinking back to like, oh, I should have gone to Morehouse. Like, I wish I had gone. And I also, I live with the regret. I just live with the curiosity of what could have been and what that experience would have been like, having 4 years of culture rooted in Black historical significance. But yeah, when me and Javon, that's my best, when we compare notes, like his—
Shout out to Javon. What's up, Javon?
Yes. His experience in high school very much, almost best way I could describe it, there was some level of almost envy or jealousy on my part of like wishing I had that in my K-12, because he was very familiar with Black literacy, Black authors, Black doctors, Black artists. Like, so he understood it, which also helped him, I think, navigate and then question when some of us who are, you know, I have several peers who live right up the street in Lawrenceville or Coney or different areas, and like, well, you know, you don't have to be so radical about it. He's like, well, I'm being radical. I just want you to also be empowered to understand like this is our history and who we are. And that means you can't accept sometimes the watered down curriculum or watered down material you may receive that says like, this is what your history is. You have to kind of seek out your history on your own. And so it did cause some, and sometimes it caused some tension, but I think ultimately it was because we all wanted to learn in different ways, but it also is like almost questioning our own reality of what we had learned for 12 years in K-12.
My heart's beating a little fast because I'm just thinking about what you're saying. What he was saying is knowing your culture and being familiar with the worth of it.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you the power to advocate for yourself in many ways, right? Like sometimes us Georgia kids who didn't grow up in Atlanta, like, you know, it's almost like we don't have the proper expectations of what our education should be. And I for sure was like well into my adulthood till I developed a strong take on that. So wow, that's
Mhm.
really powerful. And you went Greek in college too,
I
right?
did. So I joined Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. I've been a member, a brother since fall 2010. And that also was very grounding, I love my brothers. I love what I learned through that process. I'm active now. The service we provide to the community is to me like no other. And to have that bond of brotherhood, even sisterhood with our sisters and Zeta Phi Beta, it's wonderful. And you always see just Black success. And I think like that's amazing. I had a student, I'm getting a quick tangent, I'm keep it short, but like I had a student the other day, and one of the things he was telling me was like one thing he appreciated so much about his experience at the Career Academy was seeing a Black male in like a successful Black male is his words, but I'm always one of those people like, well, what's success mean? I'm going to question words. I always love to be that person to push back and just give people expand their thoughts. But he said like that helped me so much, and I never thought about like he's like you went to Georgia State. He's like I just reflected and remember like watching you walk around the building, the things you would say, the way you carried yourself, and like he's like just knowing that like we can ascend to these levels of success. And at that time, I was, for me now, I'm like, oh, I was doing okay. I'm still doing okay. There's so much more I want to do in life. Even now, there's so much more I want to do. But it was a really good reflection moment. We need representation, visually, verbally, reinforcement. It has to be there. It has to be in the curriculum. Has to be in the classrooms. Has to be in the community.
Absolutely. Like you are that one. Let's not mince words. Like there's just a lot of kids that see you as that, and it's really powerful. I'm grateful for it. Um, okay, so you said that some of those experiences in college led to your work at College Factory. So you should explain, what this organization is, what it does, and what your goals are for it.
Yes. So gosh, 2015, founded a nonprofit, College Factory. And our mission at the time was simply to provide college planning resources to youth and families in the community. We have since kind of expanded our mission to become a little bit more clear. It's at college and career planning resources, primarily to low income first generation students and their families is still in there because one thing to realize is there's a strength when you can support the family unit and not just the individual. And so we have 3 tiers. Really simply, our first kind of big tier is our heart of our organization. That's our coaching program. We have some amazing volunteers that just give their time providing college coaching to high school students, their parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, mentors. And so kids can request a coach online. They can email us. The coach will meet with them by, Zoom these days, but back in the day, but pre-pandemic, it was in person. And they're just there to answer your questions and to help you with college applications, scholarships, finding the best fit, best match college, even navigating those discussions. Sometimes parents want their child to go one way, but the child really wants to go somewhere else. And they help to kind of navigate those discussions of like, all right, mom and dad, like we know these are your dreams for the child, but like, how do you make sure you're also honoring their voice and their experience and what they see and what they want to do? We also offer SAT, ACT test prep. We did find that some of the lowest cost test prep in our town is $189 for 8-week sessions. Way too expensive for our kids. And so we do ours for free. Thanks to our sponsors, we're able to offer free SAT, ACT test prep. And then our last program, which I love, it's one of my favorite, is our community workshops, affectionately called Go Succeed Studio. We used to do them at the library pre-pandemic and at parks, just if we wanted to be outside. But as much as it's targeted towards the youth, more adults come to youth. And it's really exciting when you see, again, family members, mentors, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters coming in because they want to learn how they can support that student when they go off to college. And that's really what the workshops are about, is building out this community of support, whether it's NCAA eligibility, being an undocumented student, financial aid. Like, some of the parents come with degrees and PhDs and they say, it's changed so much since I got my degree. Like, I need to know how to support my daughter or son. And so we invite speakers who present and they can ask questions, but it's also meant for them to share information with one another. Say, hey, can I reach out to you one day? If I have questions and it seems like your daughter or son went through something similar. So we try to build this support network, and it's really grown and it's pretty exciting.
It is exciting. It's so vital because
Yep.
this college game that some of us choose to play, the rules are
Mhm.
always changing. So
Yes, always.
it's really, really helpful for kids to have someone who's hip to all that. And I've heard you talk about, and I wonder, are you still writing on this topic? The influence that first generation students going to college have on their families. Can you
Mhm.
Is that your topic still? Or
So that's not my dissertation topic has changed, but now that topic is actually part of this series, this writing, I guess you can almost call it a book at this point, book series I'm working on, which is specifically targeted to that. So my dissertation has changed to actually be focused on career academies and the impact of career academies on the community and on specifically gender and racial norms within the classrooms. We think what careers are acceptable for certain genders and certain racial groups, and whether the career academy has the potential to eradicate some of those tracking patterns we put kids on, like you should do this because you look this way and you have this academic achievement, versus like career academies being more exploratory and tied to business and community needs, being you can pretty much do whatever you put your mind to as long as you're whether willing to put forth the effort. So our career academies could be used as a tool to balance or to battle systemic inequities in school systems is technically what my current topic is. But yes, I am still working on college access and its impact on family units and to see if there's this kind of reverse transgenerational effect. That's my kind of side project that has definitely taken a backseat to my dissertation, but it's coming. It's coming.
one of your many side projects. I love the new topic though. I mean, and it's obviously something that's like really near and dear to you as a past CEO of our local career academy. What did you observe when you were in that role that was happening with your Black and brown students? Like, do you think that model, like in its current state, served them particularly well, opened up new doors for them? Like, what needs did you see that they had in particular?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, Laura, I love that question. And if anything, it makes me miss the Career Academy more now than ever. I think, the biggest thing is, I'm always grounded in my why, which is the students. Particularly, I think our Black and brown students, what I noticed is there were a lot of misconceptions, I think, coming in of what a career academy was and who it was for. And so I think one of the first things I wanted to do when I got there was how to remove that barrier. How do we say this is for anyone? You could come if you had a 2.0 GPA or a 4.3, 4.4, this was for you. It's a program for you. First thing was removing the barriers. I think what I've heard, and this is directly from the mouth of our students, was that environment where they were allowed to really be themselves, grow into themselves, not treated as if they needed to walk a certain way, straight line, be in class, from bell to bell. They had a level of freedom and accountability, actually allowed them to mature and grow faster, which is what they are asking for, right? They were asking for the ability to explore different career fields, different interests, different people. I always love when I would hear students would come in every year, that several students would come and say, I've never hung out with a student we only have two major high schools or traditional high schools in town. I've never hung with a student from Clark Central or Cedar Shoals, depending what school you went to. And it's like, they're just like me. So this whole East Side, West Side thing isn't really a thing. We're one community. And I remember 2018, a student came up with one ACCA because they're like, we're one career academy. We're just one unit. It's not this or that. I think what it also did is I think it also helped fire up the parents a bit around like, wow, like my child's coming home. They're talking about different opportunities they could have, if they continue down this pathway. And so I think it excited the parents. And I think it also just allowed our students to have a little bit to dream again and have a little bit more faith around like, you can do these things. That's going to be hard work, but you can depend and lean on each other. And we really stress that support system, even through our advisor program. How do you lean on community members and different folks who can come in and share their narrative, share their stories? They may not be a certified teacher. And I used to tell my teachers all the time, don't make yourself seem perfect. Because once you make yourself seem perfect, kids can aspire to be like you. It's hard to be a role model when it's like, I can never be perfect because I've messed up. I've got an F or I got a D or I was absent or I've gotten in trouble at home. And so share your stories. Now, yes, there's a limit, but share. Storytelling is a way to build a narrative and to allow students to see that there are other people whose experiences may be similar to yours. And so I think all that's being said, I think ultimately the foundation of Career Academy was built on relationships. Relate with the kids relate with teachers relate with administration with students. We almost did no major decisions without talking to the kids first and talking to their families. And yeah, this takes extra time, but they help build that place. Like I always just stress, like, ask the kids, they'll tell you, no, we don't want the bells ringing every 20 minutes. No, we don't want to feel like we can't go get food because y'all think we're not mature enough to walk down the hill to a cookout to grab, they're kids, but they're young adults. And once they left, all I'll say is that they also felt more prepared for college or career. So if they went straight to the workforce, they knew what it was like to be on time. They knew how to communicate. They had life skills. They're going to college, they knew how to balance their time. So
yeah. My favorite thing about it was just that it carried this culture of destigmatization of what success means, right? Like I grew up with this idea of like certain careers are up here on the ladder and then some
Oh,
are down here. And like you said, like pigeonholing, well, folks who look like this might do this thing and folks who look like this might be more suited for that other thing. I feel like that was kind of drilled into me, but
yes.
it just gave the kids a sense that there's so many different pathways to success. um, I love that whole
Oh.
lot.
And I think that's where, I mean, I'm excited to eventually analyze the results from my dissertation. That's kind of where I'm at now. But I think that's where that comes in, is you see the destigmatization comes in. You see students, whether it's gender, race, who are in robotics and STEM fields and healthcare, nursing, or cosmetology, and they're exploring in ways that, I mean, you just don't see a lot of times. And I remember one time there was and I will say we've had minimal discipline issues. I mean, even students who would come in who, if you check their academic record or behavior, fighting all the time or absent all the time. We had really one of the highest attendance rates and low incidence rates in the district for years. And I think it's because kids felt ownership of where they were and they felt like they could be who they were. And I think with the destigmatization, I remember one time we had a fight was about to break out. And, you know, as administration, we get to swoop in. I maybe get 5-6 feet away from the fight, and a young lady broke it. She's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We don't do that. This is the career academy. We don't do that here. And I was like, and I kind of backed up. I was like, oh, and then the guy's like, I mean, she's like, oh, we don't. And then other people are like, she's right, y'all. This isn't. And I was like, okay. And they just stopped. And I was like, all right, y'all. And of course, you know, administration, I still have to tell them, come with me to tell me what happened. I couldn't just let it go. But I mean, even I remember walking away proud because I was like, you know what? Like, if we give kids the runway to be the leaders that we know they are and to show the leadership capability that they know they have inside and not stifle it down or not say, you don't have it because you may be poor or your life's going to be bad because you're in poverty. Well, you know what? Many of us I grew up with humble means in the beginning, even prior to my dad being in the military. You don't know you're poor until somebody tells you you're poor or until somebody compares you to someone else who isn't. At the end of the day, you're just being a child. You're just growing, you're learning, you're living. And so, you know, we never want to put these labels on kids to be like, well, you know, you're going to struggle because of this. Now, again, facing some realities, but you can't crush dreams in that process. So I don't know how I got on that tangent. I apologize, but I just think it's so important. I mean, our kids are our future.
Yeah, listen,
literally.
we didn't talk about the Career Academy for a really long time, but we won't. I'm not going. So the last question that I always ask everyone on the podcast is, if you were to imagine like a thriving education experience for Black students in Athens, knowing all that you know, having worked in our district, having been in this role, being a bridge from CCSD to the community, what would you want to see brought to life? Like if there were no red tape and you could just bring it to life like that, what would you want to see happen?
I think the first thing is I would want to see our kids learning about who they are and who the people who came before them were and are, and the experiences that they brought. I think there's power in learning history because one, you're less likely to repeat it, but also you're more likely to honor it. And I just think about how the Historic Society, we always invited them to the Career Academy at the beginning of the year to share the history of that H.T. Edwards facility, of what Black citizens had to do here in Athens to keep that facility up and running and not torn down and turned into a parking lot, and the fights and the conversations and, you know, the years just to keep it going, and even what it was when it was in industrial school. So I think history to me would be the first thing. How do we, for our Black youth, keep that at the forefront of like, this is who came before you, let's recognize and honor it. But I also think then moving forward, in education for our Black students would be expanding opportunities for them in all these different facets of life that don't meet the norm that we have built as adults over the past, 20 to 30 years, which is, in order to be successful, you have to be X or Y. And if we could help change that image of what success looks like and help our kids have pride in who they are, and pride may not look the same way on each person, may not look the way that they dress or the way that they speak, or these different things and these different conditions that we've developed and said, this is what it must look like. Otherwise, you're not successful. We really need to get rid of that narrative and really rewrite our existence and our narrative here in Athens, Clarke County for our Black youth. And I think part of it is saying you can be whatever you want to be. And then in education, our job is to help prepare you for that opportunity. So One of my, favorite people here locally said, it's the opportunity to have an opportunity. That's what we should be giving people. It's not about, well, access is, we opened the door, or, we gave you the shoes, but did you show me how to get there, how to use it? Or do you just expect them because your experience, you know it, you don't think that this needs more support from me? So all that said, I think if I had to reimagine education for Black youth, is that they are proud, they know who they are. They may not know where they want to be, and that's okay. Shoot, I don't know where I want to be, right? Like, even as adults, we're all still guessing, like, where do I want to be next? Like, but they do feel like it's a possibility, and they feel like they have people. That to me is so important. They feel like they have people they can depend on, they can reach out to, whether it's parents, mentors, coaches. They have a support system. I think ideally it will go back to the "it takes a village" model, which is, village being purposely used. I think the village is so important, and when kids don't feel like they have a village, then they fall through the cracks. And then we, as our people, then we leave others to pick them up, and we don't know what happens then. So we have to be that village. We have to come together. We have to show unity, even if we disagree. We have to come together. So,
well, good thing
yeah, there's so much more I think.
Good thing we have a community engagement officer to bring us all together.
Like, oh my gosh, trying.
I'm rooting for you always, and it's not easy. It's not easy being in your position. So I'm just excited to be able to highlight you and just to learn from you. So thanks for being on the Joy Village podcast on your birthday week. Happy birthday. This is my gift to you.
Yes, thank you for having me. Thank you. This is a great gift. I'll take it. Nothing like having your voice out there in the world. That's a great gift.
I love it. All right. Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Laura.